Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I always thought I had a read on Ashley. After all, we'd been together long enough to finish each other's sentences, to know when the other craved peach cobbler instead of apple pie, or when silence after church wasn't just exhaustion, but something brewing underneath. I remember coming back from a short 3-day wilderness retreat with the crew, just some of the guys from the firehouse, clearing my head after the chaos of spring floods. When I got home that Sunday evening, I noticed the house felt too rearranged. The living room looked the same on the surface, but the little details stuck out to me like a bad patch job. Ashley's favorite throw blanket was draped on the opposite side of the couch. The family photos on the shelf had been dusted, but why only the ones next to the window? And the faint scent of sandalwood lingered, a scent I knew we didn't own. Ashley greeted me like nothing had changed, smiling as she wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and pulled me into a hug. Yet, I noticed her eyes didn't linger the way they used to. She kissed me on the cheek, not the lips. "Hey, babe, how was the retreat?" she asked, her voice steady, but it felt practiced. "Same old," I replied, watching her. She wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a second before turning back to the pot on the stove. I wanted to shake it off, blame it on the weird energy that comes from being away, but the feeling didn't leave me. That night, as we lay in bed, she fell asleep unusually fast, but I couldn't. I kept staring at the ceiling fan, spinning quietly, wondering why something as simple as her brushing her hair out of her face at dinner felt like a stranger's gesture. The next morning, when I left for the early shift at the firehouse, I caught her on the phone out on the porch. She hung up quickly when she saw me, waving it off with, "Just Mom," making sure about casserole night. I nodded, pretending to buy it, but the pit in my stomach grew heavier. Ashley had always been close to her mother, but she never called that early and never whispered while doing it. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe a surprise she was planning, maybe our anniversary coming up, but a voice in the back of my head whispered otherwise. Later that week, when I swung by the general store after a call, I bumped into Scott, my co-worker, grabbing coffee. He was flustered when he saw me, dropping his wallet as we exchanged the usual small-town greetings. I thought nothing of it at the time. "Everything good?" I asked. Yeah, just tired," Scott muttered, avoiding my eyes. We've been friends for years, always joking about catching big bass at the lake or surviving the yearly 4th of July chili cook-off. I figured he was just having an off day. But then, as the days passed, more small things started piling up. Ashley's text replies felt shorter. Her jokes landed flat, or didn't come at all. She kept mentioning how she was going over to help out at her sister's place more often, even though Jen lived 2 towns over and barely left her farm. I didn't question it outright, but I noticed. When I offered to drive Ashley to Jen's to save her gas, she refused too quickly, saying she liked the alone time. Alone time. The words echoed. I didn't push, didn't accuse. I told myself I was just being paranoid from too many late-night shifts and too much black coffee. Yet every little detail, every offbeat smile, and every hurried excuse wove together like a story only I seemed to be reading. And then, one night, sitting on the back porch staring at the stars like I had hundreds of times before, I realized the silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was calculated. There was something Ashley wasn't telling me, something she was working hard to keep under wraps. But I could feel it crawling under my skin, daring me to notice. And deep down, I knew I wouldn't like what I was about to uncover. It had been about a week since I first caught the scent of something being off. I tried to keep myself busy with shifts at the station, tinkering with the old truck in the garage, and convincing myself I was overthinking. Still, the itch didn't go away. Then one evening, after Ashley left to check on Jen, I decided to tidy up the house, something I rarely bothered with, but that night felt like a good excuse to distract my thoughts. I was halfway through reorganizing the coat closet when I found it. A small, neatly wrapped box, hidden behind a stack of old winter gear. The wrapping paper was red with tiny gold stars, nothing too fancy, but definitely not random. It wasn't near Christmas. Our anniversary wasn't for another month, and her birthday was long past. Curiosity pushed me to peel it open, and what I found made my stomach turn. Inside was a brand new leather key fob, monogrammed with the initials SD, Scott Taylor. I knew those initials too well. Along with it was a simple card, and signed, but the handwriting was unmistakably Ashley's. You always know how to take care of me. For all the late nights. Hey, my hand tightened around the edges of the card, creasing it as anger rushed to my head. The part that burned the most wasn't just the gift, but the casualness of it, like it was routine. Like this had been going on long enough to warrant thoughtful presence. I could almost hear her laugh echoing in the room as I stood there alone with this ugly little truth. For a moment, I considered storming out, calling her, demanding answers, but something stopped me. A different part of me, one I hadn't felt since high school mischief, whispered, "Don't just react, watch." Ashley thought she was clever? Fine, I could be cleverer. Instead of tossing the box or confronting her, I slipped the key fob out, replaced it with a broken one I kept from an old garage project, carefully rewrapped it, and slid it right back behind the coats. Let her have her big reveal with Scott, only to find a dud in the box. I wanted to see how she'd spin it. That's when the decision clicked. I wasn't going to just accuse her. I was going to let her dig the hole deeper while I stood there holding the shovel. Over the next few days, I noticed how relaxed she was. Too relaxed. She hummed while making coffee, sent me random texts again like nothing was wrong, and even suggested we go to the farmer's market together. It was like finding that box flipped a switch for me. I watched her with sharper eyes, noticed how often she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, how she'd vanish into the bathroom just long enough for a hush phone call. She had no clue I knew. That was the advantage. One evening, I offered to help her load some old junk into the truck for donation. As we shifted boxes, she laughed. "You're being extra helpful today. What's the occasion?" I just shrugged, just feeling grateful. And I meant it. Grateful, because I was beginning to see her for who she really was. Later that night, when she went to bed early, claiming a headache, I stayed up, replaying the last few months in my mind like a puzzle I'd been blind to until now. Every late shift where she'd insisted I not come home early. Every dinner where Scott's name conveniently came up in conversation, only to be brushed aside like he was just another coworker. Every little slip. It all made sense now, but I wasn't ready to show my cards. Not yet. I decided to let this game play out. If she wanted to lie, I'd let her. I'd just make sure I was watching every single move. What she didn't know was that I had no intention of confronting her until I was sure. And when I was, she'd never see it coming. It had only been a couple of days since I found that gift, but every hour felt stretched thin, like the seconds themselves were testing me. Ashley moved through the house like nothing had changed, humming along to the radio, asking if I wanted iced tea while I worked on the back deck, even throwing in the occasional peck on the cheek. If I hadn't known better, I'd have believed her. But I didn't know better, and so I kept watching. I started paying attention to patterns. When did she leave? When did she come back? Who did she mention? One name kept circling back into conversations more than the others, Darren. Darren was one of our neighbors, lived 2 houses down, always friendly, often helped with community events, and he and his wife were the kind to wave whenever you drove past. Ashley casually mentioned running into him at the hardware store or chatting with him about gardening projects. It was so casual, so natural that it made me pause. Was Darren the guy? Was it that simple? The next morning, while Ashley left early for one of her market errands, I walked down to Darren's house, pretending to inspect a loose fence post on our shared boundary. He was out front, shirt stained with oil, working on his old Ford. I watched him for a second, then approached. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, him mentioning how he couldn't get the carburetor to behave, me nodding along. Then I slipped in. "Ashley says you've been helping her with the flower beds lately." Darren chuckled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Me? Nah, haven't had the time. Work's been a nightmare. Barely seen your wife around." He looked genuinely puzzled, not faking it, just a man talking straight. That pit in my stomach stirred, but not the way I expected. He wasn't lying. I knew when folks were bluffing. Darren wasn't. I nodded, thanked him, and walked back up to the house, gears turning. If it wasn't Darren, then who? That night, I casually mentioned Darren's name during dinner. Ashley barely reacted, just mumbled, "Oh yeah, I think he's been busy." The way she said it fell off, like she was steering clear, too careful. Still, I held my tongue. "No questions." Not yet. A few days later, I got my next breadcrumb. I'd stop by the diner after shift for a quick coffee, figuring maybe some chatter from the regulars would give me insight. That's when Lisa, the waitress who'd known me since we were teenagers, leaned over and said, "Hey, is everything okay with you and Ashley? She's been in here a lot lately with Scott." The name hit like a cold slap. Scott, my buddy from the station. I try to play it off. "Oh," she said, "they've been sorting out some surprise for me." Lisa laughed, unaware. "Well, they sure are meeting plenty for it. I just figured you knew." I smiled, nodded, thanked her, left a tip, and walked out feeling like the ground was splitting under me. Scott, of course. The texts, the little side jokes he'd make at the station lately, the way he'd stopped inviting me over for poker nights. It all clicked. But then the anger gave way to realization. I had been wrong about Darren. Completely wrong. I was ready to accuse the wrong man in front of everyone. I could have made a fool of myself and never even uncovered the truth. That thought was almost as gut-wrenching as the betrayal itself. Back home that night, Ashley was already asleep on the couch when I walked in. I stood there watching her for a while, wondering if she'd wake up and confess. She didn't. She just lay there, peacefully oblivious to the fact that I now knew. But I said nothing. I just turned off the lights, went to bed, and stared at the ceiling until the sun rose. The next day, she kissed me goodbye like always, unaware that the game had officially changed. I wasn't guessing anymore. Now I knew the name. I knew the face. And from this point on, every step I took would be deliberate. Days blurred together, each one carrying a weight I couldn't put down. I kept up the act, playing the husband who suspected nothing, but every time Ashley kissed me, every time she smiled, it felt like a blade twisting deeper. I needed more. More than just diner gossip and a knot in my stomach. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable, gut punching proof. And the more I watched, the more I noticed the patterns. Ashley had started taking longer on her so-called errands, always had some flimsy excuse about traffic or running into a neighbor at the store. She never was a great liar, but somehow I hadn't seen it until now. What really set me off was a small detail she must have thought I'd never notice. Late one evening, I was in the garage cleaning out old paint cans when I noticed her phone vibrating on the workbench. She'd left it unlocked, screen lit up with a message from Scott. Still on for Friday? Short, casual, like they were arranging a poker night, but I knew better. My pulse quickened as I scrolled up. The thread was mostly harmless, a few jokes, vague mentions about the dogs. Then came another. The garage is good again. Usual time. My breath caught. The garage? My garage? Our garage? I fought every instinct to smash that phone into the concrete. Instead, I carefully placed it back exactly how she'd left it and walked out, pretending nothing had changed. Friday. I circled it in my mind like a date with destiny. But I didn't rush. I spent the next few days watching, listening, piecing it together like a man sewing a net he planned to pull tight. Ashley mentioned casually on Wednesday that she'd be picking up parts for the fence I was supposedly planning to fix. Funny, because I hadn't planned to fix anything. Scott offered to help me grab them, she added, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I nodded, hiding the boiling storm inside me. Sounds good, I replied, acting none the wiser. On Thursday, I stopped by the firehouse on my day off and found Scott in the break room. His smile faded when he saw me. I could see it, clear as daylight, the guilt barely masked behind small talk. "You coming to the Johnsons' barbecue next weekend?" he asked, voice a little too chipper. "Wouldn't miss it," I said calmly. I wanted to hit him, right there. But no, not yet. I needed him comfortable. I needed them both to believe they were still hidden. That night, while Ashley was out picking up wine, I went through her car. Tucked under the passenger seat was a gift bag. Inside was a new leather wallet, engraved with the initials SM Scott's initials. There was even a note attached. "Thought you'd like this. Love, eh?" No card, no further words. Just that. It was all the confirmation I needed. I took the wallet, left the empty bag behind, and returned to the house before she did. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I was far past that now. When Ashley came home, I greeted her like always, even offered to pour the wine for her. She looked relieved, probably thinking she still had me dancing in the dark. But I wasn't in the dark anymore. I was simply waiting for the right time to turn on the lights. Later that night, after she went to bed, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about every time I trusted her, every shift I'd worked late while she played her little games, every piece of myself I'd given to a woman who clearly hadn't deserved it. It wasn't just anger. It was betrayal that cut deeper than I thought possible. Still, I knew this wasn't the time to lash out. No, I wanted this to be precise, clean, controlled. I wanted to see the look on both their faces when it all came crashing down. And if patience was the price for that, I was more than willing to pay it. It was Friday. The day circled in my mind all week like a storm cloud waiting to burst. I woke up early, kept to my usual routine, made us both coffee, even kissed Ashley on the cheek like nothing was brewing beneath the surface. She chatted about her plans for the day, like she had every right to sound that casual, but every word from her mouth sounded hollow to me. The betrayal made it so I could barely hear her without imagining Scott's smug face behind every syllable. I played along, though, nodding, joking, smiling like a fool while inside I was sharpening a knife. The hours passed slower than molasses, but I stayed busy fixing up the side fence, hammering boards, sweating under the sun, all while keeping a careful ear out for the sound of her car leaving. Around mid-afternoon, I heard it. The engine. The tires crunching over the gravel. I didn't rush. I knew where she was going, and I wasn't going to trail behind like some desperate husband. No, I had other plans. I cleaned myself up, changed into jeans and a plain t-shirt, then grabbed my keys. I took the long way around town, circling the back roads, until I ended up parked behind the old feed store where I had a clear view of our garage. The spot wasn't much, just a worn-out shed behind our house, but it was now their hideaway. I waited, watching through a pair of binoculars like some wildlife observer watching a pair of foxes slink through the underbrush. And sure enough, there they were. Scott's truck pulled up along the side, Ashley's car already there. They didn't even have the decency to look cautious. They walked right into the garage without so much as a glance around. I could see them laughing. I could see Scott's hand on the small of her back like it was nothing, like they hadn't hollowed out the heart of our home. I didn't move. I didn't storm in. I just sat there, breathing, memorizing the way they acted when they thought I was safely tucked away at the firehouse. I needed to see it with my own eyes to believe it fully, to stamp out every last doubt. And I got more than I bargained for. Through the gap in the old garage window, I saw them. Close, too close, confirming what I already knew. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was fact. Stone cold, sickening fact. My stomach churned, but I didn't flinch. I stayed until they finished their little game and left, laughing as they drove off in separate directions like nothing happened. I noted the time. I noted everything. When I got home later, Ashley greeted me like nothing was amiss. "How was your day?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine like the faithful wife. I wanted to answer with venom, but I bit it back. "Busy," I said flatly. "Yours?" She shrugged. "Oh, just errands. Picked up a few things for dinner tomorrow." It took everything in me not to explode then and there. But the rage wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready yet. I needed this to land perfectly, with no room for denial or pity. I sat with her that evening, nodding along to her stories, watching every blink, every shift in her seat, every casual sip of wine like it was nothing. She thought she still had me in the palm of her hand. The beauty of it was that she didn't even know I was already slipping through her fingers. Later that night, I sat alone on the back porch, staring out at the yard where we'd once dreamed of raising kids, building a bigger house, hosting bonfires. Now it felt like the set of some cruel joke, a backdrop for a show I never agreed to star in. But I wasn't going to be the fool in this story. I had made up my mind. No more watching from the sidelines. No more hoping for explanations that would never come. I wasn't going to wait for Ashley to confess or for Scott to grow a conscience. I was going to end this my way on my terms. The difference now was simple. They were playing with stolen moments behind my back, thinking I was blind. But I saw it all now, and I knew exactly how I was going to flip the script. The 4th of July block party was only a week away, and while Ashley was busy planning outfits and dishes to impress the neighbors, I was planning the fireworks. Only this time, they wouldn't be the kind you could light with a match. That morning, I woke up before dawn, staring at the ceiling as if the lines in the drywall could map out my next move. I had spent the entire week walking through the house like nothing had changed, playing the part of the clueless husband while every detail of my plan came together. Ashley moved around like a queen in her castle, humming while packing supplies for the block party, texting furiously like she wasn't sitting across from the very man she betrayed. Every smile, every joke she cracked around me felt like acid on my skin, but I stayed cool, poker-faced, even when I wanted to scream. By the time we were out in the driveway, setting up folding chairs and stringing lights between the trees, most of the neighborhood was already buzzing about the party. Everyone knew this event had always been Ashley's pride and joy, but this year it would be mine. I had made sure of it. I kept glancing at the clock, pretending to be worried about the weather, but really I was counting down. When the sun started its slow crawl toward the horizon, people trickled in with dishes covered in foil and coolers full of beer. I worked the grill, just like every year, flipping burgers and making small talk with neighbors who had no idea what was about to happen. I made sure to greet Scott when he arrived. His handshake was steady, his grin too comfortable, like a man who thought he had every secret safely locked away. "Glad you could make it," I said, and the weight behind my words slid right past him unnoticed. Ashley stood nearby, welcoming folks with her usual charm, laughing at Scott's jokes as if nothing about their little arrangement could possibly touch this perfect day. But what Ashley didn't know was that the guests weren't the only ones I had invited. See, I had quietly called Erica and Kayla earlier in the week, the twin sisters who used to visit their aunt every summer, the same ones who always had a soft spot for me back when we were teenagers. They were older now, sure, but still carried that same spark, and when I explained the situation, they didn't hesitate. "Count us in," Erica had said with a sharpness that told me they understood exactly what kind of party this would be. As the sky turned a soft pink and the first firecrackers popped in the distance, the twins arrived, dressed casually but unmistakably stunning. Heads turned. Ashley's head turned. I watched her expression tighten for just a flicker before she smoothed it over. I introduced Erica and Kayla like old friends, which technically they were, and slipped them each a knowing glance that they returned without missing a beat. We mingled, laughed, and made sure Ashley noticed every little interaction. The twins didn't lay it on thick. They didn't have to. Just their presence and the way I seemed comfortable, too comfortable, was enough to rattle her. Later, as the bigger fireworks began, people gathered toward the front yard, leaving the backyard quiet, just like I planned. I leaned in and whispered to the twins, "Let's go for a swim." They followed me without question, and minutes later, we were in the pool, splashing around like teenagers again. I didn't care that the neighbors might glance back. In fact, I was counting on it. Ashley, distracted at first by the fireworks, eventually turned. I saw her head snap toward us, confusion flashing into horror as realization settled on her face. I made sure to catch her eyes when Erica jokingly splashed me and Kayla pulled me into a playful hug. I smirked, held her gaze, and didn't blink. I could see her mouth something to herself before storming inside, slamming the door hard enough for it to echo down the street. The whispers started immediately. Neighbors exchanged looks. A few kids even giggled, clueless to the depth of what had just happened. Scott, standing next to the grill, paled visibly, looking around as if hoping no one noticed the dominoes falling around him. I climbed out of the pool, dripping, unapologetic, and took a deep breath of the warm summer air. The show had started, and everyone saw it. Ashley wasn't just embarrassed, she was exposed. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the curtains when I woke up, but sleep had been nothing more than a few restless hours anyway. I stared at the ceiling, already knowing what today would bring. The whispers from the block party wouldn't die overnight. In a town like ours, stories spread faster than wildfire. By now, half the neighborhood had probably texted or called someone about what they saw behind the pool fence. But that wasn't enough. I didn't want murmurs. I wanted certainty. I wanted the truth to be undeniable, hanging in the air like smoke after a 4th of July finale. I made coffee and sat on the back porch, watching the sun climb up behind the tree line while I replayed every moment from the night before. I didn't regret it for a second. I had watched Ashley crumble behind those glass doors, unsure whether to explode in rage or curl up and disappear. But this wasn't just about embarrassing her. No, I wanted something more deliberate, something that would stick. The betrayal wasn't just between husband and wife anymore. It involved friends, neighbors, and the whole fabric of the community. That's what I intended to rip apart today. By noon, I was out at the garage, pretending to clean up while waiting for the next step. I knew Ashley wouldn't stay quiet for long. Sure enough, she came storming out, arms crossed, eyes sharp as broken glass. "What was last night?" she snapped, standing at the edge of the driveway like she was about to deliver a courtroom cross-examination. I set down the wrench I wasn't even using and turned slowly, calm as the morning breeze. "Last night," I said, wiping imaginary grease from my hands. "Just catching up with old friends." "Why? Something on your mind?" Her lip trembled for half a second, but she recovered quickly. "Don't play down, Mark. You humiliated me." I leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, steady. "Humiliated you?" Funny choice of words. I tilted my head, letting the silence pull her in deeper. You've got no idea what humiliation even feels like yet." The weight of that sentence hit her like a punch, but she wouldn't back down. Ashley was always stubborn. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her lie. I let her stew in it. I spent the rest of the day working on the yard, making rounds to neighbors who pretended not to be curious but couldn't help asking. "So, everything okay after last night?" I gave them all the same easy answer. "Ashley and I are just sorting things out. No details, no gossip from me. Just enough mystery to let their imaginations do the heavy lifting." By the time the sun set, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The entire neighborhood was talking, but more importantly, Scott wasn't showing his face. I hadn't seen his truck once all day. Either he was laying low, or Ashley had warned him, but it didn't matter. He could hide all he wanted. He'd still show up to work on Monday. Later that night, as I stood in the kitchen pouring a glass of water, I heard Ashley pacing in the living room. "You're being cruel," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. I turned to her calmly, sipping my water. "I'm just living my life," I said. "Isn't that what you told me you wanted? Freedom? Space. Well, now you've got it." Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. I let the silence smother the room. Finally, she whispered, "You don't even care anymore, do you?" I took another slow sip. "I care plenty," I said, walking past her toward the stairs. "I care about finishing what I started." I left her standing there, surrounded by the ghost of what used to be our life. And for the first time since I saw those messages, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because I'd hurt her, but because she finally understood that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. The setup was almost complete. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would be unforgettable. It was the quiet before the storm, the kind of silence that presses on you from all sides. I woke up early, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I wanted a head start. I knew Ashley would try something. Pride like hers doesn't let things go without a fight. And sure enough, as I finished up my morning coffee on the back porch, I heard the soft shuffle of feet behind me. I didn't bother turning around. She cleared her throat, like she was about to deliver some grand speech. "Mark," she said cautiously, "we need to talk." I let her stand there for a moment, soaking in her own hesitation before I slowly turned to face her. She wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. Desperate, maybe. "Go on," I said, voice flat. "No comfort, no softness. Just business." She wrung her hands like she was trying to scrub off invisible guilt. "I know things got messy," she started. I arched a brow, resisting the urge to laugh. Got messy? That was her phrase for appending our entire marriage? "But I want to fix this," she pressed on. "We've been through too much to just throw it all away." Her eyes searched mine, hoping to find some trace of the old Mark, the man who would fold the second she showed a tear. But that Mark wasn't here anymore. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Fix it," I repeated calmly. "With what? Another weekend at Scott's? Another batch of lies you've been practicing since God knows when?" I could see the panic in her eyes, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. She flinched at every word like it was a slap. "It wasn't like that," she stammered. "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight." "Funny. I said, standing up and stepping closer. You seemed pretty coordinated when you slipped out for those late-night dog-sitting trips. Was it Scott's idea to pick my schedule so perfectly, or were you just that good at guessing? I saw it then, the crack. The moment she realized there would be no bargaining. No soft landing. Only a free fall. She tried another angle. We can get counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. The plea was almost pitiful, but there was something selfish about it too. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge the wreckage she caused. She just wanted to patch the roof without fixing the foundation. I stepped past her, heading into the house. I've already made up my mind, I said over my shoulder. You should start packing. I thought that might break her down, but Ashley wasn't finished. That evening, she called friends, family, anyone who'd listen, spinning half-truths and sob stories. By the time I went to the store for groceries, I gotten a few concerned texts from mutual friends. You two okay? They asked. Ashley says you're being cold. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew the truth would rise to the surface soon enough. The final nail came the next morning when she cornered me in the kitchen, mascara smudged, voice shaking. Mark, please, don't ruin us over this, she said. I'm begging you. I placed my coffee cup gently on the counter. You ruined this, I said. You and Scott did that. Not me. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Sometimes the truth, plain and sharp, is the loudest thing in the room. The real surprise came when Ashley's own parents stopped by later that day, furious, not at me, but at her. Turns out the neighborhood rumor mill was running full throttle, and the story wasn't flattering. I stood in the living room as they tore into her, and for once, I didn't say a word. I just watched as the web of lies she'd spun collapsed under its own weight. She cried, pleaded, tried to make excuses, but no one was buying them anymore. Not even the people who raised her. Later that night, when the house was dead quiet, Ashley sat on the edge of the bed, staring into nothing. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. I stood at the door, arms crossed. I'd start by figuring out where you're staying tomorrow. I replied, turning off the light without another word. The silence after that was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. If you'd like, I can continue straight into the final chapter. Just say continue, or let me know if you want to adjust it in tone, suspense, or intensity. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.